Hey, welcome everyone. I'm Ted Erhart. We're talking about U.S. Treasuries again today for two reasons. We've seen a move in interest rates, and number two, we're starting to see a kind of a warning light that recession may be around the corner. And this is a key economic indicator that has to do directly with interest rates on Treasuries. So let's get into it. A couple weeks ago, I mentioned the 2-year U.S. Treasury was starting to look attractive if you had some idle cash to put to work. At the time, the yield was around 1.9%. Take a look at where it is today. It's at 2.3. This is just in about 2 weeks' time, so we've seen a major move there. I want to drop down and compare where we were a year ago. Notice the black line. This is where interest rates were on Treasuries 12 months ago. The blue line represents where yields are today, and you can see there's been a huge move, specifically kind of at the middle part of the curve. So additionally, this is also known as the yield curve, if you will, and economists care about this because the shape of the yield curve sends a signal to where the economy may be headed. So specifically, short-term interest rates are generally lower than long-term interest rates, and we can see that especially if we look back a year ago, that was absolutely the case. The curve was normal. But today, we're starting to see what's known as a flattening and even a slight inversion of the yield curve. An inversion means a situation where short-term rates are actually higher than long-term rates, and we actually are seeing a partial inversion today. So most notably, the 3-year Treasury right now at 2.48% is actually slightly higher than both the 10-year and the 30-year. So economists care about this because if we look at the post-World War II era, an inverted yield curve has preceded every recession. So I want to pan over to a chart I showed. Actually, ironically, I showed this chart in in February of 2020, literally weeks before all hell broke loose with the pandemic. Kind of interestingly, the yield curve was flashing this same signal at the end of 2019, kind of Q3, Q4. It doesn't show up on this chart, but the yield curve actually did slightly invert. And of course, we ended up getting a recession in 2020, but I'm not sure it was for the reasons that the bond market was worried about. But let me cut to the chase. Here's what I want to point out. All these gray shaded areas represent recessions, and you can see this goes all the way back to the 1960s, this chart at least. If you look at all these dots plotted out on this line, every time you see a dot, that represents this phenomena, an inversion of the yield curve. And you can see there's an inversion every time we've had a recession in advance. Now, there have been a couple false positives, notably in the late 90s and in the mid 60s. We saw an inversion before the curve normalized and then inverted again. So this isn't a perfect indicator, but it is absolutely sending a warning sign that the economy could be teetering a little bit here. And frankly, I don't think that's surprising given where the inflation rate is, which of course has a lot to do with energy prices. Of course, the Federal Reserve has also basically promised we're going to see interest rate hikes throughout the course of 2022. All that is going to put downward pressure on the economy. So frankly, I think the consensus view is starting to form that a recession is very likely to occur over the course of the next 12 to 18 months, and the yield curve is absolutely one of the signals that's that's kind of becoming the market consensus. So anyway, that is just kind of a quick update on where things are at. Let me kind of pan back over so you can take a look at where Treasury yields are again. If you have idle cash, I still do think the 2-year is a relatively attractive opportunity, like we talked about a couple weeks ago. So anyway, I wanted to keep this under 5 minutes. I think we've succeeded. Thanks for watching. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video, and look, I hope we'll see you on the next one.